many used to say that sport is not or should not be political, and many sports bodies have rules banning political expression. But recent world events in particular have undermined this approach. We first of all consider the origin of what we now call sport. It was firmly rooted in politics and society. Many early sports, from ancient China and the Far East, Egypt and the Middle East, to Greece and Rome, were associated with social customs and rituals, or were used as part of military training. If you think of the political role of bread and circuses in ancient Rome, or take the gladiatorial conflicts that were staged in Rome, that directly reflected the political and cultural structure of society. Combatants were drawn from the slave class and compelled to fight. And one of the most famous early examples of a social revolution was led by the slave Spartacus, whose band of escaped gladiators from Capua led a revolt that posed a major threat to the Roman elite. And then if we look at modern team sports, these can largely be traced back to the Industrial Revolution, in particular in England, and to British and to a lesser extent European imperialism, which exported, along with Christianity and other cultural baggage, such games as football, tennis, rugby and cricket to the four corners of the world. In the 20th century, sport and politics very often coincided. The 1936 Berlin Olympics, of course, was the first to be televised and to use a travelling Olympic torch in its opening ceremonies, was specifically designed by the Nazis to promote fascist ideals of racial supremacy and anti-Semitism. German Jewish athletes were prevented from taking part in the games. After the Second World War, Eastern European countries treated the Olympics as a show to promote the superiority of their country's economic systems, while Western countries saw sport as another means to promote the ideas of individual, and of course commercial, freedom and liberty. In 1980, the USA led a boycott of the Moscow Olympics to protest the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. A few years earlier, in 1976, the Montreal Olympics was boycotted by 25 African nations over the IOC's refusal to ban the New Zealand rugby team, who had toured in apartheid South Africa. And later, the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics was boycotted by various countries led by the USSR in protest at the anti-Soviet hysteria, as they said, being whipped up in the United States. And of course, sport had a pivotal role, central role, in the struggle against racial segregation in apartheid South Africa. Post-Cold War, states have been just as keen to use the hosting of major sporting events, such as the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup, to promote their role on an international stage. So think of Beijing, Sochi, Qatar, or even London 2012 and the recent Commonwealth Games in Birmingham 2022. Each event sets out to, or cannot help, but in some way represent or reflect the politics and values of the hosting nation. Whether it's described as sports washing by the detractors of the nation or soft power by its supporters, it amounts to essentially the same thing. Sport being used to legitimize a state, society, and its ideology. And of course, sport also reflects the disputes that arise within nations where one part seeks its own identity. If you consider China and Taiwan or Israel, Palestine, international sporting organizations have been forced to adopt their rules and make various political compromises. But perhaps because the influence of sport or politics on sport is so obvious, it has been hidden and denied. Each of the major sporting organizations have promoted a myth that sport is not political, usually by including rules purporting to ban politics from sport. There have been numerous examples. Liverpool's Robbie Fowler was fined for displaying a T-shirt expressing support for a local dockers strike in 1997. Argentina were fined by FIFA in 2014 because their players stood behind a banner with the slogan Las Malvinas son Argentinas before a match against Slovenia. Celtic have been fined twice by UEFA for their fans displaying Palestinian flags at matches. Manchester City's manager Pep Guardiola was fined by the English FA in 2018 for wearing a yellow ribbon in solidarity with the Catalonian independence struggle. Each had breached different football rules banning any form of political expression. But these anti-political rules become strained depending on the nature of the politics that are expressed. So in 2016, FIFA fined the football associations of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland for allowing their players to display the Remembrance Day poppy symbol during international fixtures. The FIFA Disciplinary Committee held that the poppy was a political symbol, and it thus offended various FIFA rules prohibiting the display by players of political slogans or symbols. That decision was controversial, and FIFA eventually backed down. The Black Lives Matter international movement against racism and the campaign against LGBT discrimination in sport has also tested the denial of politics to the limits. English football has long permitted kick it out anti-racist symbols at football matches, and more recently rainbow laces, anti-homophobia campaigns. And the decision of many English football players to take the knee during the 2020-21 football season made banning such expression nearly impossible and politically unpalatable. However, the tension has remained. UEFA rejected Munich's request to illuminate its stadium with rainbow colours during the Euro 2020 match between Germany and Hungary, not because it found the overt use of the rainbow colours to be political. UEFA proclaimed without irony, "For UEFA, the rainbow is not a political symbol, but a sign of our commitment to a more diverse and inclusive society." They banned it because the request to use the colours was, they said, itself political, linked to the Hungarian football team's presence in the stadium for this evening's match with Germany. In other words, the gesture was seen as targeting the homophobia of the Hungarian regime. Demonstrating a commitment to diversity was okay, but not if it's in the form of an objection to those who oppose diversity with discrimination. The threatened breakaway European Super League further exposed this double talk about sport and politics. FIFA has very strict rules preventing any national government interference in football, and the English Premier League had previously suggested that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would have to agree to its rules if Newcastle United was bought by the Public Investment Fund of that country. But when the European political leaders came out against the breakaway league, and the British Prime Minister Johnson threatened a legislative bomb to prevent the top 6 English clubs joining it, such political interference was met with widespread approval by most people in football. And perhaps Russia's war in Ukraine, more than anything else, has finally exploded the myth that sport is not political. Not only has the displaying of the Ukraine flag at football matches and other sporting events been officially sanctioned by competitions, but sports throughout the world have taken the decision to exclude Russia or Russian nationals from competing. There are still those, however, who try and pretend that none of this is political. Opposing racism is not political, they say, it's just supporting diversity. Government intervention to prevent breakaway leagues is not political, they say, it's just protecting football. Siding with one side in an international war is not political, it's just standing up to aggression, and so on. Those who seek to deny that sport is, and always has been, political are really saying that something is not political when it conforms with their worldview, but it is political and must be banned when it does not do so. So one wonders really, how can sport maintain a ban on politics in the future? How can one possibly square the official promotion of the flying of the Ukraine flag or the rainbow flag with the fining of clubs whose supporters fly a Palestinian flag? How can one justify the exclusion of Russian athletes because of their state's illegal invasion of a country, but not apply the same approach if the US or Britain invade a Middle Eastern country unlawfully. It will surely become increasingly difficult to do so, and for sports governing bodies to be able to sanction athletes, teams, or supporters for expressing political opinions.